You're listening to Radio Mayapur with the best devotional, meditation, kirtan music, and inspirational podcast. This is Radio Mayapur.
Good morning, everyone, to Radio Mayapur, the link to your heart. This is Gangadas, your host, and today is a beautiful sunshine. It's 11:20 a.m. It's a beautiful to be in Mayapur, and it's the best time of the year. It's not too hot, not too cold, and everything is green and wonderful. So today we are very, very fortunate. We have one of the great souls of our gigantic army of Srila Prabhupada, White Elephant. His name is Sauri Prabhu, who was born in England in 1950, therefore he's 72 years old. And he became devotee in 1972 in Sydney. He's a publisher of 6 books on Srila Prabhupada memory. He was also Srila Prabhupada's secretary for 1.5 years, traveling around the world. So, Sauri Prabhu, welcome here to Radio Mayapur.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
So, Prabhuji, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, you're born in England, and you're coming from which family? Your brother, sister, your father, mother, a little bit, so that people can relate to you.
Okay. I was born in November 1950, so I've just turned 72.
Yes. Happy birthday.
My material relationships, my mother is still alive. She's 100 this year.
Wow.
My father passed away a long time ago. He was 67. I have 2 older brothers,
Nice.
A sister, and a younger brother.
Nice. Big family.
Yeah. So around about the age of 20, I left home. And at that time, the Australian government were offering free passage, more or less, to qualified people who wanted to come and emigrate there.
Nice.
So I saw that. I was very discontent at home. And we heard about this. It's what they call the £10 passage scheme.
Wow.
If you met the qualifications, you give the Australian government £10 for your fare, and they cover the rest.
They send you by ship or by plane?
We had a choice. We could fly, or we could go by boat.
Okay.
And we chose boat.
Wow.
Because we didn't want to be, traveling for 28 hours, I think it was in those days, on the aeroplane.
Wow.
And then as soon as you get down, they gave you 1 free week in a hostel, and then you had to get a job and get yourself a place to stay, etc. So we just thought that we don't want to just suddenly be, from one place and then 12,000 miles away the next day. So we had a month on the boat.
A month in a boat? Was a nice traveling, or was a cargo ship?
It was, well, the ship itself was decommissioned about 2 hours, 2 days, not 2 days, about 2 years. It was
Old boat.
It was an old boat.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, we were glad to get out of England.
Nice.
And,
Must have been a nice experience for you.
Well, yeah, I guess. At that time, I was very intensely trying to figure out what was going on with my life.
Right.
And I'd not met any spiritual people. That was out of the question from the area where I was from. But I just wanted to get out of England.
Yes, I understand. So, but then what was your first encounter with the devotee? Was in Australia?
Well, prior to meeting the devotees, in 1971, we'd got we had been accepted for the free
Australian passage.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get things sorted out in my head here.
Sorry.
We got to Australia, I think in about April of 1971. I didn't know it at the time, but Prabhupada had just visited Australia for the first time about a month before I got there. And before leaving England, I had an out-of-body experience.
Wow.
Which is something like they call an epiphany. It was one of those moments where something happens that's so profound it changes your whole life. So we'd gone to see some friends in London, and they'd gotten some substance that we were trying out.
Right.
And as a result of taking that substance, I
had out-of-body experience.
I left my body, but just like 2 seconds. I could see myself, it's my assumed self, my body, laying on a couch. My friends were talking with each other. And I was kind of up in the air, looking down. And I felt like I was made of pure energy. It was just, an incredible. So in the moment that happened, then I thought, I'm out. And as soon as I thought I'm out, I was back in. But there was only a couple of, few seconds practically. But after that, I couldn't stop thinking about, what had happened. I realized that there was some kind of realm. I didn't know how to describe it, but I realized that there was some other levels of awareness or consciousness.
Correct.
So it was profound enough that I had to pursue it. So when we arrived in Australia, I was already, going through a lot of speculation and trying to figure out what we really are. What is death? Why do we have to die? So we got into Sydney, I think, on the April or May of 71. And I didn't particularly like Sydney. The city itself is all right, but I didn't like being in the big city. And after we'd had our free 1 week stay, we headed off to the west of Australia, and I worked for 6 months on a mining camp just to get some money together. So every now and again, anyway, so when we landed in Sydney, then the first day there, we departed the boat, and we decided to go for a walk around, check Sydney out. And there's a bunch of us. Some guys that we met on the boat.
Right.
So there was like 10 to 12 of us all together. And when we got downtown Sydney, then I heard this ching, 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 ching. And I was wondering, what is that? And we came to a crossroads, and there was a small group of devotees doing Sankirtan. And then on each street corner, there was a devotee with a stack of Bhakti Godhead. So we got stopped at the lights, and one of the girls in the devotees, she approached me, by a magazine. That devotee is by Barbie Darcy. She's
still a devotee.
She's the wife of Charu Prabhu from Utah. So they run that. But in those days, she just joined a few months before. Anyway, so...
So you got a bit, you purchased it?
She approached me, and the magazine was something like I'd never seen anything like it before. It was so unusual. The front cover, it was a number 37. The front cover is a Rasa Leela. And, just the colors and the Sanskrit names, and I couldn't make any sense of it at all. But somehow or another, I knew it was important to keep that magazine. I mean, when I looked inside it, there was like a line drawing of Narada Muni. I was thinking, who's this woman? And we looked at the cover. Nobody could figure out what it was. And one Scottish fellow we met on the boat, he said, well, I think the blue fellas, they're spirits. That's all the Rasa, that's right, Krishna expanding. That was as close as we got. But anyway, I knew that it was almost like the magazine was vibrating some kind of spirit energy. And I knew it was important to keep it, even though I didn't understand at the time what it was about. But I had the thought that I'm going to need this in the future, so keep it. So, yeah, we landed. We couldn't find a decent situation in Sydney. It was too big of a city for, a few boys from English iron and steel town. So we decided that we wanted to go back overland to Perth. When the boat came to...
Went to Sydney.
Well, we got down in Sydney, but the boat had stopped for half a day in Perth, and then another one day in Melbourne, and then we got down in Sydney. So we thought, let's go back to Perth.
It was a nicer place.
Yeah, it was...
smaller place, maybe.
Just like a country town.
Yes.
It wasn't big at all. It kind of suited us. So we traveled by bus from Sydney to Perth. Took, I think, 2.5 days. I swore I'd never do that again. And after a couple of weeks in Perth, we couldn't get jobs there. We heard that there was some mining camps up in the northwest. And so we bought with practically our last $50. We bought an old utility vehicle and a 44-gallon drum of petrol, which we filled up and strapped down in the back of the utility. I mean, but it's like, we were driving literally a bomb. But anyway, so we went up the north. We did get jobs there, and we stayed for 6 months. Not in the mine, but on the surface. It was a new mining camp, so they were just building the infrastructure. And for me, I was, in one sense, in ecstasy. I was.
You were happy.
Well, I was up there for 6 months. I think for the first 6 weeks, I didn't see a single cloud.
Oh, yeah.
It was just bright and sunny every single day. And
opposite to England, where there is no sun.
Yes, I couldn't handle England because of the cold and miserable aspect. So when we arrived in Australia and it was just like permanently sunny, I thought, this is great. I felt, an affinity, if you can. So every now and again, I'd take out this back to Godhead. It was a good situation for me because being on the mining camp, there were no distractions. We worked 12-hour shifts.
And you are in the middle of nowhere, in a desert or something like that?
Yeah, up in the Pilbara mountain range. Yeah. And it was very nice, but I was going through these, existential
query.
I got to a point where I figured out that there's another reality than the one that I'd known growing up. And I got more and more disassociated.
With external material situation.
Yeah, I sometimes I had this experience. I'd go out onto the mining campsite there, and it was like looking at a TV rather than some real thing. It was disassociation, but at the same time, I didn't have any alternative to understanding what life is. And I had one or two experiences where it was like having a vision where it was like I was outside the universe looking in, and I could look in to this so-called universe, and I understood everything that everybody was doing was just a useless waste of time. It was like, you have a glass box filled with an ant's nest, and all the ants are running here and there, but where are they going? They're trapped. So I was outside the universe looking in, but I couldn't see what was behind me. I could only
see the universe.
See the front. So I needed to, find out what disassociation, what it meant. At the same time, I had this burning question about what death is. Became a little obsessed with trying to figure that one out. And most of all, and to my great surprise, I started to think, well, what is God? I was, looking at, in my speculations, I would try to figure things out about who we are and why we're here and all that. But whenever the idea of God came into it, I would immediately,
push back.
Yeah, because I've been brought up practically as an atheist. Right. And
so there was a kind of rejection of understanding who is God.
Yeah, I mean, I was an atheist in my teens, under the influence, I think, of my elder brother. But by the time I got to 19, just before we left and went to Australia, I got this. I became a bit more reasonable, and I thought, you can't say that there is or there isn't a God. Nobody knows. So being an atheist was not a position I could sustain. And at the same time, I didn't know what God was, whether he's there or not here. But it was something that I had to find out. I mean, basically, I wasn't looking for anything religious, but I was trying to figure out what the truth of our existence was, why we're here and all of that. So I'd go through these periods of intense speculation, and the one thing that kept coming back to me was, what is God? And it would annoy me like anything, this little three-character word. God, what is God? So after 6 months on the mining camp, I just decided to go back to Sydney, find these people that I'd purchased the magazine from, and try and figure it out. And by Christmas, I think, of 1971, then I had enough. And I told my friends, I'm going to try to find out more about it. I'll, write to you when I find a place. And so off I went. And I went down to Perth, and then over to Melbourne, and then headed for Sydney. And when I got to Melbourne, I had a train ticket to Sydney. I had an 8-hour stopover. So I thought I'd have a look around. And when I came to the city square, then...
So again, you heard the sound of the...
my intention was to go and find the devotees in Sydney, but then by that time they'd started up a centre in Melbourne. So immediately I went over. The devotee I talked to, his name was Upananda. He had 3 or 4 different editions of the Back to Godhead. So I immediately purchased one of each, I think 3 different editions. And I asked him, I said, have you got something there that tells you what God is? And he got really excited.
Whoa.
I guess you don't often get that. So he immediately, to his credit, he opened up one of the Back to Godheads. And the first article is always by Prabhupada. And so he showed me one paragraph. God is omniscient. God is omnipresent. God is omnipotent. And he's a person. So I put my finger in the page, in between the pages, to make sure that I didn't lose the spot. And he was doing his best to persuade me to come visit in their Melbourne temple. But I told him, no, I've got to go to Sydney. Somehow or another, I had it in my mind, got to go to Sydney. So I went. In Melbourne, there's the Yarra River. It kind of flows through the city. It's not a big river by any means. But I went, to kill some time, I went onto the riverbank, and I took out the magazine to the spot that he showed me. And I had figured out in my speculations that whenever I'd get this vision of the universe, I got an understanding that if you're outside the universe looking in, then you can get to a point of you know everything in essence, and that because you're aloof and outside of it, your power would extend through the universe. So omnipotent, all-powerful, omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipresent, being everywhere at once. So that had come up a couple of times. That I understood that if you could be outside of the universe, then you could have, these. My speculations, it kind of elevated me out of the material world. So anyway, when I got this magazine, I sat and started reading it, and that, the statement was that God is omniscient. And as soon as I read that, it was like a light bulb went off in my head that, of course, if you're outside looking in, you can know everything. Omnipresent, you're everywhere at once. Omnipresent, omnipotent.
Omniscient.
Yeah, I would say that. Omnipotent, all-powerful. So as I read each attribute, God is all-powerful, God is omniscient. It was like boing, a light bulb going off in my head. And then finally it said, Prabhupada said, that God is a person. And then that was it. It was like about 1,000 light bulbs going off all at once. And I thought, of course, he has to be a person. If he knows everything and he's everywhere, and he's got to be a person. And that was a complete revelation. I never thought about God being a person. And
amazing.
And then the last part of the descriptive was that God is a person, and his name is Krishna.
Wow.
And when I read that was it. I said, of course, he's got to be a person.
With a name. And
he's got a name. I think that's really far out. So that was it. As I was getting this realization, then along with that came the realization that if I accept that this is true, that means that there's nowhere where I can go where God won't know. There's nothing I can do that he doesn't. Yeah.
You cannot hide.
Yeah, you can't hide, you can't. So that I thought, well, that's it. Then I'm going to have to join the temple. I'd never been to a Hare Krishna temple. I'd never met the devotees, except to buy the Back to Godhead. But that description was the complete philosophy. And I thought, that's it. I've got to go and find these people. If I'm going to be true to myself, because I'd struggled for nearly a year trying to figure everything out, what's going on. And now I thought, if I don't act on this, then I'll lose it.
Correct.
So that was my That's what led me to becoming a devotee.
Nice. But tell us, how did you meet Srila Prabhupada and what's your impression of him?
Well, these are, this realizations that I had, it was, I think, like January of 72. And when I got to Sydney, I didn't know where the devotees were. So I was going out downtown and roaming around for an hour or two, hoping that I'd bump into them somewhere. So after about 4 days of doing that, I finally bumped into the Sankirtan party.
Nice.
And from, let's see, it was the first person that I spoke to on the party was Sahadev, who was in Mayapur at the moment. He told me, we have a Sunday feast. You should come and talk. So that was it. I went to the temple. I had breakfast there, Oliver and all those. And well, there was a thing in ISKCON, I guess, at that time, that if somebody was going to bloop, or they were, they wanted to leave, you just give them a bowl of Oliver, and then they would.
They were convinced to stay back.
So anyway, I started going to the temple, and then I found out Prabhupada's coming for his second visit to Australia.
Nice.
And it was going to be there in 6 weeks' time. So I joined the temple in mid-January. I shaved up, actually, I think, on St. Valentine's Day in mid-February. And when I joined, there was about 10 devotees. By the time Prabhupada came 6 weeks later, there was about 45 devotees.
Wow. Because they came from all over Australia to see him.
No, these were people that just
joined.
Every time we went out on Sankirtan practically. And Sankirtan meant chanting. There's no books. We had a few back to Godheads.
Nice.
And so, you come back from the Sankirtan party, and there'd be some,
Interested people.
somebody sitting on the doorstep waiting to, to join.
Nice.
So it was a very kind of exciting, powerful experience because everybody was new. The temple president was Mohanananda. He was 19 years old. He had been sent from America to help shore up the yatra. And
so what happened when Prabhupada came to 6 weeks? You're there, you're doing service.
So we were all excited about Prabhupada coming, but at the same time, you're kind of very apprehensive. And like with me, with all the money that I'd earned on the mining camp, which was the first, but it was the first time in my life that I actually had some money. And
just surrender.
And yes, and now I realized it was not mine; it was Krishna's. So I gave everything that I had to the temple, and Prabhupada came on April the 1st. So I'd been in about 6 weeks. Everybody was brand new, and he stayed for about a week. Then he went to Melbourne for 3 or 4 days. And then back up to Sydney for another couple of days, and then on to New Zealand. So the apprehension was that after giving everything, to the temple, simply on the basis of what was written in the Back to Godhead and other books, there was apprehension. There was, whether he would live up to what we thought. from reading his writings. And at the same time, we were excited,
So what was your first impression when you saw him and everybody's excited and you came to the temple? And
Well,
was a wow moment, or was it like, who is this? Or?
Well, one devotee that was there was Upendra, and he had previously been Prabhupada's personal servant.
Yes.
So he would tell us stories about Prabhupada in San Francisco, and and when I joined the temple, I gave all my money.
Yes.
And they had just purchased a double-decker bus.
Wow.
But they hadn't paid for it. They didn't have that. They didn't have any money. They had 3 months in arrears rent for the house we were staying in, and so that double-decker bus, we converted it into a traveling temple, and the money that I gave to the temple was used to pay for the bus. So April the 1st, Prabhupada arrived in Sydney. There was some mix-up over the time that he was due to arrive. We were going to go out in the bus to pick him up at the airport. And so I was getting the bus ready, sweeping it out. And then the bus driver, it was a devotee called Raghunath, he was helping me. And then all of a sudden, he jumped out of the bus and ran into the temple. He's here, Prabhupada's here. So I looked out the window and there was a black taxi, and it had pulled up in the middle of the road. And the doors opened, and out steps Shyamasundar and Nanda Kumar and Pradyumna. And then Prabhupada came out. And the first thing that hit me was that he's really small physically. He was just very, very small. And not the kind of, physique of somebody that's, creating a worldwide revolution or something.
Right.
So I came out of the bus. I offered my full dandabats on the roadside. And then by this time, all the devotees were scrambling, finish off whatever they were doing, get ready for Prabhupada. And Mohan Ananda came running out, Prabhupada, and he hugged him. And I knew you were, I was new, but I knew you're not supposed to hug your spiritual master. Yes. But he was so emotional. And so he just grabbed Prabhupada in his arms. And then he realized, So that was the first sight. And Upendra, he had been telling us that actually, although we say Krishna Consciousness is the highest stage of realization, there's an even higher platform, which is Prabhupada conscious. So he said, you'll see when Prabhupada comes, and it'll transform you. So when Prabhupada came, that was it for about a week and a half.
You give class every day in the temple?
Yeah. He was staying in a rented house one of the early greenhouses had in Paddington. So Prabhupada was staying there in the daytime, and then in the evening he was coming to the temple. And we did a few programs. We did some interviews on the TV. We did a program in Sydney University. And then in Melbourne, when they went down there, they had arranged to get the Melbourne Town Hall, and they put up a poster all around Melbourne with the profile of Prabhupada. And it's a Jagat Guru, spiritual master of the universe. And that was plastered all over Melbourne. So there was a lot of, anticipation. And when they had the program at the Melbourne Town Hall, about 2,000 people came.
Wow.
I mean, the place was overflowing.
Nice.
I wasn't there. I was up in Sydney, but I heard about it later on. So it was, very, very successful. And Prabhupada, he could, see that we were, there were no senior devotees that really knew the philosophy. And so he just, he had installed Radha Gopinath the year before. And he just initiated everybody that was in the temple.
Nice.
Just trying to give a boost. And there was
You
one...
got initiated too at that time?
Yeah. So April 9th in 72. So we all got initiated. Within 2 days, one young man from Sydney, his name was Ray, and he was like 17 years old. He left. For him, like his peak was that he'd seen Prabhupada, that was it. He was gone. So we were a bit bewildered. And Mohan and then had told Prabhupada that this boy had been initiated and now he's gone. So Prabhupada just said, he did not accept me and I do not accept him. But most of the other devotees survived. So that was the first time I saw Prabhupada. It was really, as Upendra said, it was like you were on a completely different level of consciousness. Just Prabhupada being there every day. One or two of us got to go on morning walks, and so it was an amazing experience. And we were all, early 20s, or not even 20. We had run-ins with the local council, the police, but on the basis of what Prabhupada and the instructions he'd given us, we would go out and, we didn't care about the cops or anything, and we get fined, put in jail. But Prabhupada, really pushed. Later on in the year, Charu, who was the vice president, he wrote to Prabhupada that the council are bringing a case against us. So what to do? If we go to court, then if we go to court, that's going to cost like $1,000, lawyers' fees. If we don't go to court and just carry on, then
we don't have to pay anything.
Well, we didn't. No lawyers' fees, but we would have. We had a whole bunch of fines and things like that had been levied. So he wrote to Prabhupada asking what we should do. So Prabhupada told him not to bother about the council, just go and do your Sankirtan as you like. Let them arrest us. It will gradually get public sympathy. Seeing the devotees always being arrested, it would get public sympathy, as it was going on in London actually at that time too. So that's what we did. We just, when all the cases came to court, we just ignored them. And then they would issue a fine. And then after that, after a certain period of not paying the fine, they'd come and arrest us. And quite a few devotees were put in jail. And yeah, it was a very exciting time.
You preach in the jail as well, right?
Yeah. Well, we were fasting. Some of the devotees were fasting. So that got a lot of attention too. Personally, I had an experience. I'd run up a few fines. And if you didn't pay your fines, they'd put you in jail one day, $40. So if you had 400...
It's 10 days.
Yeah. So people like Korma, he got arrested. He was put in jail for 10 days, 8 or 10 days. I got arrested because they would raid the temple early in the morning. There was one council officer that was really trying to drive us off the street, and they would raid the temple at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So well was that.
And, this guy was so fanatic that he knew the name, he knew the spiritual and the kami names of every devotee. And he knew how much we owed in fines. So this particular day, I'd stayed back at the temple. When the cops would come, the temple was a terraced house and it had a lane at the back, laneway, and the front door. So as the cops were coming in through the front door, the devotees that had fines, they would run out the back door, jump in the van, and go off to the local park. And so I didn't know I had any fines. And the cops came in, the council guy comes up, Harry Sauri das, and it turned out I owed, I think, $40 or something like that. So it was like one day and 2 nights in jail. So they took me away with the temple president to the local, they call them a watch house, like the local police station. And that was it. They put us in the cell. Then Sanak, they came back. Sanak, the temple president, he owed about 8 or 10 days worth of fines. So they took him to the the watch houses. You could only stay for 2 days. If you had problems beyond the 2 days, then they took you to the main city jail, Pentridge, which was where all the criminals and people were. So Sanak was taken away and put in the Pentridge prison, and they left me in this holding cell for what was going to be 2 days. So in the evening, a cop came in and gave me a meat pie, because they had to feed you as well. So I said, I can't take that, we're vegetarian. And he was annoyed, but there wasn't much he could do. So I spent the night there Then in the early morning, the duty officer came, and he said, "What's this I hear about you not eating?" I said, "No, we're vegetarian." So about half an hour later, he comes back. He's got a vegetable pie from the local deli. And he said, "Here, this is vegetarian." So I said, "No, I can't eat that."
It's not offered.
Exactly. That was exactly what he said, "What do you mean you can't eat it?" I said, "It's not offered." So he said, he looked puzzled, and he said, "Offered? What do you mean it's not offered?" Yeah, I went to the shop, I bought the pie, I brought it back, and now I'm offering it to you. So I said, "No, it's got to be offered on the altar to Krishna, otherwise we can't eat it." So he stumped out. And then I guess the desk sergeant or somebody, he came in and he said, "What's this you're not eating?" So I said, "No, we can't eat anything that's not offered to the Lord. So he didn't want the hassle, so he just gave me my neck beads. And they said, "All right, get out." So he kicked me out. But anyway, that was how it was for a couple of years. We had a lot of clashes with the cops and things. And Prabhupada was always, encouraging us. Don't worry about what the police say or do. Just go on and do your Sankirtan business.
But then you were traveling with Srila Prabhupada later on as his personal secretary for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
That was in which year, do you remember?
Well, 1975, I came to India for the first time.
Okay.
And we were opening a new... the Krishna Balarama Mandir was opened.
Vrndavan.
So I was there for that. And, of course, because that was on Ram Navami, we actually had about 6 weeks in India for the festival at that time, which was really good. And we did a 1-week pandal in Hyderabad after the Mayapur leg of the festival. We went down to Hyderabad, then we came up to Mathura by train. Then the temple was opened on Ram Navami Day. Then Prabhupada went off traveling. And we went back to our temples. But for me, I just got this, compulsion that I should stay and, join the Krishna Balarama Mandir. So after I got back to Australia, I saved up some money and then got myself a one-way ticket back to India. So I got there about the end of July or early August. And a few weeks later, Prabhupada came. So it was his first trip to Vrndavan after the opening. And we had his association for about 3 weeks through Radhastami. And then he went to South Africa and Mauritius, Kenya, that area. And he came back in early November to Bombay. And then he came up to, November the 25th, I think it was. He and his party came back from this African tour. And Prabhupada was in a very unusual situation in that he didn't have his personal servant with him. He always traveled with a secretary, and his personal servant. That was the minimum. And then he was joined a lot with Pradyumna Prabhu, who was doing his Sanskrit editing. So they arrived, and I had done about 2.5 months, 3 months as the temple commander. When I first joined, they immediately grabbed me, and we had manpower shortages at that time in India. And when Prabhupada came to Delhi, he only had Harikesh with him. He was cooking and transcribing. And Hansadutta flew in from Europe for the month of December as a visiting GBC. And it just happened that I was in Delhi for one day on some private business. And then because Prabhupada was arriving the same day, I thought, it's just great, get a good chance. And that was one thing about being in India. Prabhupada was personally involved in the 3 big projects. So you got to see him quite often.
The 3 big projects means Vrndavan, Mayapur, and Bombay?
Yeah. And it was just, you got a lot of association compared to what you did in the West.
Yeah.
Western temples, Prabhupada would come for 1 week and then move on. But he was in and out of India all the time. Anyway, so he didn't have
secretary.
Well, he didn't have his personal servant with him. There'd been problems in Africa, and Prabhupada had told Brahmananda, who was the GBC, and he was Prabhupada's secretary, that he had to go back to Africa and sort the problems out there. There were a couple of other devotees that had been Prabhupada's servant previously. Upendra was one. He was in Vrndavan, but the next day he was flying out to Fiji to do some preaching there. And who else? Nitai Das. He had been Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor, and he was also doing the personal servants' duties. So he had to go down to Bombay and get his visa sorted out. So when Prabhupada came up, it was, just Harikesh, basically.
So Harikesh at the time requested you to become the secretary of Srila Prabhupada, or the
Not
servant.
quite. But anyway, Prabhupada had a discussion with Harikesh, who's going to fill in, whilst Nitai is away in Bombay. So Prabhupada had seen me sitting at the door during the darshans. So he told Harikesh, well, what about this Australian boy? So Harikesh had a bit of an experience in dealing with me. I got in the Janmashtami period, I had gotten into an altercation with this Bengali devotee, which ended up me giving him a bit of a knock. And Prabhupada heard about it. I got called in. And I was thinking, oh no, this is a disaster. This is the first time I've been ever sent for by Prabhupada himself. And it's for, getting in the fight. Anyway, that got sorted out. But Harikesh had seen me in action. So he just thought that I was this wild man, And So he was not keen when Prabhupada suggested, this Australian boy. But Prabhupada told him, he said, no, he's here, so give him a chance. So that was it. The next day Upendra was leaving for Fiji, and Nitai had already gone south to Bombay.
But nobody trained you. You were there on the spot, and then
right.
you had a service, and Prabhupada had to train himself. We saw your video. You are giving massage to Srila Prabhupada and stuff like that.
Well, Upendra, he had that one day. So he took literally 2.5 minutes to show me how to do the Prabhupada's massage.
Nice.
And, then I was on. So the next day when he left for Fiji, it was about 11 in the morning. So Prabhupada looked at me and said, so, let's go. So I went up on the roof, and Upendra told me, use sandalwood oil for Prabhupada's head, mustard oil for his body. He took me through the order, massage. And there was one other massage in the evening, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, but that was not with oil. That was a dry massage.
Before he sleeps.
Yeah, just keep his circulation going. And so that first day, anyway, when I started doing the massage, something unexpected happened, which I had not been warned about by Upendra or whatever. And that was that as soon as I started massaging his head, all the joints in my fingers started to seize up because I was not used to doing that kind of motion. And it was getting worse and worse. And I got to a point I was just praying to Krishna, just please let me do this service. It's a once in a lifetime. So somehow or another, let me do the service. As soon as I started praying like that, all the joints loosened off and became supple and normal. And I never had that problem again afterwards.
Amazing. But tell us, what is the most astonishing thing you saw while traveling with Srila Prabhupada? Because being with a person who is a spiritual leader of the world, of many people, and then you see him in different situations. So what was the most astonishing or wonderful experience you had while traveling with Srila Prabhupada? Something that nobody has seen or nobody knows, or which was for you like, what? I'm sure there must have been so many situations, but you can tell one of them.
Well, I mean, when you were traveling with Prabhupada, it was like a traveling festival. For the devotees where, in the temples where Prabhupada was visiting, that was the peak of,
Yes.
But for the party, we were doing it every day.
Yes. So you are in constant festive mood.
Yeah. And
but for example, did you ever see Prabhupada lose his patience or chastising somebody really heavily or out of love or something like that? Because you see Prabhupada always is very sober person, yet many times sweet, and many times speaks very gently, very nice, very strongly also, but we never saw Prabhupada angry, for example.
He rarely got angry, but when he did, you felt it. I got chastised really heavily on a couple of occasions. And I was very much aware of the fact that several servants before I came on the party had problems after a few months because familiarity breeds contempt. So servants rarely lasted more than 3 or 4 months. And so I was always careful. You know.
Super careful.
Yeah. To avoid, that getting into that
wrong mentality.
Yeah, just inattentiveness. And I had a couple of really, really bad mistakes I made. One of them was I locked Prabhupada up on the roof of his rooms.
In Vrndavan?
In Vrndavan.
Mm.
And it was after breakfast. Prabhupada had gone upstairs to take rest sometime. He liked to lay out in the sun. And I just wasn't thinking. And I escorted Prabhupada up onto the roof. There's one room there. So you go through one side and then another door to get onto the back part of the
building.
The building, Prabhupada's rooms. And
you lock him
somehow or another, I wasn't thinking. I escorted Prabhupada onto the back space, put a mattress down. He laid down and rest. And this was like September, maybe, October, 76. So whilst we were out in the summer in America on the last world tour, the devotees had been fixing up Prabhupada's room a bit in Vrindavan. Prabhupada had requested them to put a toilet upstairs. And
but when Prabhupada chastised you afterward, it was not angry anymore. He just started to straighten you up, and then again was sweet.
Right.
It was not like carrying a grudge against you or anything.
Oh,
like
no.
that.
No, I got... anyway, I'd gone downstairs because the devotees had fitted a bell. So if you were downstairs, you could press the...
And you can hear.
And I would hear it if it was in the kitchen. So that particular day, I'd escorted Prabhupada up onto the roof. And I was thinking, if he needs me, he'll ring the bell. But the bell was inside the room, so you had to go through the doors, 2 doors. And when I exited, I thought there was a couple of devotees from Australia that had just arrived. So I was going to chat with them and, just really just pajalpa. But so we're talking away, just at Prabhupada's entrance to his rooms. And then there was a German devotee called Maharati. He's a big guy, like typical image of the blonde Aryan German. And apparently he had been a butcher before he became a devotee. So he was staying in the guest house and he looked out the window and Prabhupada was on the back. And Prabhupada looked up and so he called him and said, "Where is Hari Sauri? He's locked the door. I can't get out. He's keeping me prisoner." So he came flying down the stairs. As soon as I saw him, I immediately understood
something,
what had happened. And so I ran up on the roof. I went into the room. Normally when you went into Prabhupada's presence, you bowed down. And when you leave, you bow down. And I didn't bother even doing that. I just wanted to get the door open. So there was a screen door there, and Prabhupada was on the other side. And I I slid the bolt to open it. Prabhupada just looked at me with disgust. He said, "You rascal." He said, "I've been here for an hour." And that was all he said, and then he went downstairs. Then when we got downstairs, I tried to apologize. And Prabhupada said, "Too much voracious eating and sleeping." So I did my best to apologize, but it was time for the massage, and all through the massage, it was like this cloud of depression. I could feel it, almost physically, like weighing me down, and the reactions to the offense. So I made up my mind what to do, how to deal with that. After lunch, he again went back up on the roof. He was sitting in his rocking chair. And when I came up, I stretched myself,
Full
Dandabats. And I said, as sincerely as I could, I said, "Prabhupada, I'll never do that again. I'm really sorry." And as soon as I said that, he smiled. And when he smiled, that was gone. That weight was gone. So simple reactions are very tangible things. And that was my practical experience of it. There was a comparable incident in April of 76. Pushta Krishna Maharaj had been added to Prabhupada's party as the full-time secretary. And so he and I were traveling with Prabhupada on that last world tour. And the devotees had purchased a Mercedes, not exactly a limousine, but a, top of the notch. So that Mercedes was going to be kept in Delhi and looked after by a devotee called Chechi Guru. And we were going to go on tour. And as we left Vrndavan, we drove back to Delhi. And then we were going to, 2 days later, we were scheduled to go down to Mumbai. Mm-hmm. So we got to a place called Palwal, I think it is. And in those days, the road from Vrndavan to Delhi was very small. Yeah. And only when we got into Palwal, there was a divided lanes. And Pushta Krishna was driving. And Chachi Guru was in the front passenger seat. And I was in the back with Srila Prabhupada. And Pushta Krishna was explaining to Chachi Guru, what this knob is for, and this is it, So I was giving him a rundown on the way the car works and whatever. So he wasn't watching where he was going. We must have been doing about 70 miles an hour. The road was fairly clear. But up ahead of us, I was looking through the windscreen, and there was a camel cart, and there was the
camel cart with the hay.
There was a bullock cart that was stacked up with hay, and the camel cart was, I think it was the camel cart was overtaking the bullock cart. You can imagine the speed. And we're coming up from behind them at nearly 70 miles an hour. And then I thought, I better say something because Pushta Krishna's not paying attention. And then I thought, no, if I say something, he'll get annoyed with me. Pushta was a little bit like that. I mean, bless his soul. But I thought if I say something, he'll get a bit annoyed with me. Then I thought, no, I've got to say something now. We were going so fast. So just as I was going to say something, Pushta Krishna looks up. He sees these two animal drawn trolleys or whatever you call them. And we were already on top of him by the time he realized what was happening. It was too late. And he stamped his foot on the brake, and the wheels locked. So to stop the Mercedes from getting out of control, he had to release the brake, and we kind of cannoned through the gap between the divider on the road and the bullock carts, and we went through the gap in the middle, and the car hit on the side. We hit the camel cart, and there was a big bang where we hit them. These big wooden axles from the camel cart, buffalo cart, and that smacked into the side of the car. But the Mercedes was such a big, heavy vehicle that it
went through.
The impetus just carried us through. I looked out the back after we'd gone past them, and I saw there was a couple of guys sitting on top of the hayload. That all came tumbling down. I don't know what happened to them, but we weren't going to stop. Otherwise, it would have been a riot. So Prabhupada was in the back. He got so angry, he didn't say anything. He just gritted his teeth. He said, "You're going so fast." And then that was it. He didn't say anything more. He just sat in stony silence for the rest of the trip. Pushta Krishna's obviously freaking out. When we got to Delhi, Prabhupada couldn't get out his side.
The door was jammed.
The door was almost popped. Fortunately, no glass was broken. Prabhupada had to get out the other side, and he walked around. There's a big hole in the door panel. So Pushta Krishna offered his obeisances and said he was sorry. And Prabhupada said, "All right, just get it fixed." So they did that. So when I observed Pushta Krishna, and somehow or another, I just didn't feel that he had, his apology was sufficient. And in fact, the week later, when we were in Melbourne, I was telling Balaram, the temple president, what had happened with the car, and Pushta was walking past us, and he got annoyed because I more or less said it was his fault.
Yes.
And he didn't like to accept that. So I felt that, his apology was not sufficient. And, this was my observation, that his apology was not sufficient to clear away the reaction, the apparatus. And of course, a couple of months later, he resigned as Prabhupada's secretary, gave up his sannyas and got married and went back to college. And it turned out that he was not chanting any rounds, or he was only chanting 2 rounds a day. So that's, part of being a personal servant. You got to be very, very careful not to commit, offenses by whatever means.
Absolutely.
And if you do, then you're going to get a reaction for it. So
Tell us a little bit about this latest book you wrote, because you wrote 6 books, but the latest one is, what is the title and where people can get your book?
right.
Whether it's available on Amazon or people can call you or order from your email or something like that.
Yeah.
And what is the book about, of course? You wrote already 6 books. This is the last one. I don't know if you're working on some other book as well.
Well, during the period I was traveling with Prabhupada, I was keeping a regular daily diary. And
Yeah, that's nice. I wanted to ask this because how you remember all the dates, all the places. And so you must have kept diary every day. Otherwise, it's impossible to remember all this.
If you write things down, then
Yeah,
you
you
remember.
can remember, yeah, absolutely.
So
So the latest book is about, what is the title of the book?
well, the main diary goes from November 75 to mid-March 77. And then there was a couple of weeks in May, June of 77. And then I came back onto Prabhupada's party for the month of October as the visiting GBC. And Prabhupada had a system. He had a regular permanent secretary, and then any GBC secretary could book in for 1 month and travel with Prabhupada. So I thought, this is a good opportunity. I'll book in. So I booked the month of October, 77. And I arrived in Bombay on the 29th of September. I stayed for a month till about October the 28th. Then I went back to Australia. So that last month I kept another diary separate from the one that I was keeping when I was the servant. So it's a slightly different perspective. And it's, very concentrated.
What's the title of the book?
So, I kept that diary. I was going to publish it after I'd completed the Transcendental Diary series, but that didn't work out. But
No, you were saying that this book you kept
right.
the diary is very accurate.
So I published 5 volumes of the Transcendental Diary.
Yes.
The last month in Vrndavan, it's kind of, because it's a separate work, really. But it's called Back to Vrndavan.
Back to Vrndavan, okay. So where people can get this book if they want?
Well, here in Mayapur.
Here in Mayapur, or if you are in the world and listening, how can people send you an email and get it? Or can we get it from Amazon?
I'm not sure about Amazon,
Okay.
whether we went ahead with that, but the
Krishna.com usually carries your books.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure whether they're doing that anymore, but you can try that. I have a website, Lotus Imprints.
Lotus in print.
Imprints.
Okay. So people can contact you into that website and get the book.
There's you can purchase electronic copies.
Oh, that's nice.
We may be able to get it out in hard copy
Print out.
later on. But for now,
it's available on soft copy.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been in Mayapur also for a long time now. And what's your vision of Mayapur? How it's developing? You've been part of so many different groups, or master plan, this one, that one. How do you see Mayapur is progressing as a city?
Well, my wife and I, Sitala, and daughter, Rasarani,
yes.
We moved to Mayapur in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been here a while. I've done a number of services here. I spent a few years doing the CPR work, child protection stuff. In 2009, myself and a devotee from Sweden, Pranava, we started this project, Bhaktivedanta Research Center.
Yeah.
And we got what was originally the main library of the Gaudiya Math in Bag Bazaar. After the breakup of the different factions, the main part of that library was taken by Sundarananda Vidyavinod, who was one of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's main editors. When they broke up, he took the library back to his own house and just kept it there. So around about 2008, we got the opportunity to get that library. So we opened it officially on 2009. And I kind of maintained and developed that up until 2018. Then, due to health issues, I had to retire from the management of it.
Right.
But that project's going on.
It's in Calcutta, yes. It is near Motilal.
Yeah.
The name of the road in the Ramakrishna Hospital. I know I came there many times.
Yes.
I remember. So that's going on, right? They're doing
the devotees from Chowpatty, right. Balaram Leela Prabhu, and a gentleman called Sumanta Rudra. They oversee the activities of the...
And they're saving all the book into the soft copy, into the computer. They're doing the scanning and everything.
Yeah.
So some of these books are very, very rare. I remember seeing some of them handwritten by Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and something like that in Bengali. And,
yes.
Right?
There's a lot of invaluable literature in there. And because we got such a good library, we were able to get affiliation with Pune University and Mumbai University.
Nice.
We're still working on Calcutta. They've still got a bit of a communist hangover.
That's always
but we've started a PhD course. We got 4 students at the moment working to get their PhDs.
Studying all these ancient books.
Yeah, different aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Of course.
And we want to expand that. We want to get to a point where we've got scholars who are devotees teaching Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the universities in the West. That's it has to be done because let's take, for instance, this first edition of the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a foreword in there from Professor Dimmock.
Mm-hmm.
So Dimmock was regarded as being the foremost scholar in the West on the 6 Goswamis and their works. But the guy's a drunkard. Yeah, I mean, none of these people actually believe what they're, the 6 Goswamis. They're studying their works, but they don't believe it.
They're just academic study.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they speculate about what it is or what it isn't. So we want to get to a point where all the scholars who study, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Baladev Vidyabhusa and 6 Goswamis, we want that expanded. And let's say like 150, a little longer, years ago, the British abolished Sanskrit as the main language media, and introduced English education. So we want to reintroduce, different aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy and practice. So you have to have the literature to do that. So it's a very important topic. So that's another thing that I've been working on.
That's nice.
What else? That's pretty well the main things. Right now, I'm a member of the executive team that's developing the exhibits for the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium.
Nice.
So yeah, trying to keep busy where I can.
Always. So if you would like to send a message to all the people listening to our podcast, and we'd like you to invite the people to come to Mayapur, maybe, if you want to say a few words in conclusion of this wonderful podcast.
Well, yeah, there's been some major developments in the last few years. Just like this road that goes
from the Ghat to our ISKCON all the way to the main.
Well, I always used to wonder that, we build this temple, all these illegal shops, literally hundreds of them, are outside our front gate blocking everything in.
Yes.
How are we going to deal with that? But the government this last year, once they'd given official approval that this area is to be developed as a tourist attraction, and of course ISKCON Mayapur is the attraction. So as part of the deal, they gave us 700 acres of land. They didn't give it to us, but they lifted the restrictions.
Yes.
What was I going to say? My brain's not working.
I was asking you
the roadway there as an example.
Right.
The government last year decided to finally widen the road. So they've just obliterated all the shops that were illegal. They're all illegal anyway.
Yes.
And they're actually building a proper infrastructure. We got a proper sewage plant that's being built.
Prabhupada Ghat, the bathing Ghat also.
There's Prabhupada Ghat. The government's giving a lot of money for shoring that river
Right.
side up. So there's a lot of stuff happening. We've been through 2 years of lockdown,
Yes.
which knocked us back a little bit, but we're over that now. We've got a master plan where all the patches of land that are available, they're all allocated. So 26 acres has been allocated for the Mayapur University.
So we're looking for a sponsor, somebody who can come and say, okay, I'm here, put my name, here's the money, let's build the university where people can come and study.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of leading industrialists that are showing some interest in
Our project.
Developing Mayapur as a
That's nice.
township. So we're very hopeful about, the progress that we're doing there. And they're supposed to be moving Lord Nrsimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj into the new building, I think probably by the end of next year. And then after that, maybe a year or two later, then the main deities will be moved.
So we'd like to welcome everybody to Mayapur and meet our devotees here. And a lot is going on. And we'd like to thank Hari Sauri Prabhu for coming today here and give us a little glimpse of what was to be with Srila Prabhupada and to be in his presence. We'd like to thank you so much for coming. And I hope we'll meet you again, and then we can continue to tell my story. Please be free to get the book from Hari Sauri Prabhu by writing to his email or his website or into krishna.com. And you're all welcome to Mayapur. Thank you so much, Hari Sauri Prabhu, for coming and spending some time with us. And Radio Mayapur is the link to your heart. Please listen 24-hour. Our radio is going on, and you can listen to for interview, and you can get inspired. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
You're listening to Radio Mayapur with the best devotional, meditation, kirtan music, and inspirational podcast. This is Radio Mayapur.